Good Sunday evening to you. I'm meteorologist Dan Skeldon, 7 p.m. Irish pub Sunday nights, even on the first Sunday night of football season. We try not to conflict with Eagles games. It's time for Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. You can always stop on by the pub. You can watch live. You can listen in to the discussion. You can participate and ask questions. Pamela Carty is under the weather tonight with a sore throat. But we always like to bring varied guests. Last week we had meteorologist Jim Eberwine talking about Hurricane Dorian. Dorian thankfully long gone. This week, very honored to welcome back for a return visit Atlantic County and 2nd District Democratic Assemblyman Vince Mazzeo. Vince, Assemblyman, nice to have you here.
Great to be here, Dave.
And as always, Vince, just, everyone knows the Mazzeo name in Atlantic County and beyond, but just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a 2nd District State Assemblyman. I've been for 6 years. I'm running for my 4th term. Prior to that, I was a mayor. I was a councilman before being a mayor. So I have about 16 years in public service. But my family business is B.F. Mazzeo Fruit and Produce in Northfield. My father started the business in 1959. We have about 47 employees last time I counted and checked. But certainly, being in business since 1959, the Mazzeo name is well known. It has helped my public life as far as people knowing the name. But it's being a small businessman and being in the public sector. It's a very difficult time sometimes balancing everything. But I really enjoy both jobs, as being an assemblyman and working in my store. It's very gratifying for me.
And what's the summer like for you? Is the summer more store-based rather than Trenton-based? Or, I guess you're never off the clock as an assemblyman. You're always doing something for your district. But, what's life like in the summer of an assemblyman?
Well, in this specific year, we have a campaign, so we run every 2 years.
Yep.
So really, we never stop campaigning or running. We're always doing something. But generally speaking, in the summer months, there's not any voting sessions after the budget is struck at the end of June. So July and August, we're not going up to Trenton, but we have public appearances to go to different places. And believe me, I have a lot on my schedule. You can look at my calendar. There's certainly a lot to do. And I enjoy it. It's whatever the subject may be, going to a church, a barbecue, going to different functions. And of course I have my office hours that people come with constituent services and making sure that they're here and hopefully we can help them.
Are there any subjects coming up now? Does it have to be storm or flooding related, which of course is the topic of this show, but are there any hot button subjects right now locally that you're hearing repeatedly, whether it's events or at your office?
Well, specifically, there's always, it seems Atlantic City, we're always talking about the different things that's going on. My biggest issue when we're talking about Atlantic City is, the property taxes. The last few weeks there's been a lot of talk about Atlantic County. Their taxes, the property taxes have gone up in Atlantic City. But if you want to look clearly what happened to Atlantic City, the Atlantic City municipal tax hasn't gone up. The Atlantic County tax has gone up. And part of the issue was a few years ago, which the Municipal Stabilization Act that we put together, myself and the late Senator Whalen, was put together to stabilize and stop tax appeals, and we created the pilot bill that actually the casinos pay directly to Atlantic City to pay down their debt services and all that trouble. So, the issue of what people are getting at the tax bill right now doesn't specifically, it's not the municipal tax that's going up, it's coming from the Atlantic County property tax bill.
The tax is probably, always a hot button issue, right? With all residents, no matter where you live in the country, it's always taxes. Something we were talking about just before the show, infrastructure. It's something that federally, we need better roads, better bridges, and locally too, infrastructure improvements. Wildwood Boardwalk has been an issue, and that's made the news recently. How do you think, we've had plenty of storms that have done damage as well. What's the best way, do you think? How do we change that to better fund that and keep up with that?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation recently in our caucus. There was a specific bill that pertained to Wildwood, where it was $60 million for 15 years, or $4 million for 15 years.
And that's for boardwalk improvements or replacement.
Yeah, and there's a conversation of, I guess, going from not only Wildwood but Atlantic City, Ocean City, and all the way up the coast. Can there be a conversation, perhaps, that we have maybe a trust fund to help pay for boardwalk improvements, because lately we've had tremendous storms. If you believe in the global warming or not, there has been trouble as far as the boardwalks and the infrastructure of them. And let's be honest, they create tourism to our district, and that money goes directly back to the state of New Jersey. So is there a way that state, county, and municipality could come up with some type of sharing, where they share for these infrastructure costs? And the fact of the matter is that infrastructure costs is done through the DOT, Department of Transportation, and past administrations they never came up with the ability to pay for it properly. So we're always behind in our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, as you know, in this region, haven't been funded properly. It's just until recently where the funding has come to fruition, and we're trying to play catch up now. Whenever you put off something as far as infrastructure for years, it becomes problematic because you're just building on it. You have to come up with a systematic approach as far as how you're going to pay for it, and making sure that you hit these projects so you don't come in these problems that we have now as far as the bridges and the roadways needing a lot of help in New Jersey.
And infrastructure is very important in a coastal municipality, or in Atlantic County, lots of barrier islands. If a hurricane were to hit, or even a really bad nor'easter, there can be evacuations. So you need reliable roads, you need reliable bridges. So infrastructure is one of those issues where it's probably not partisan. It's probably, everyone should be able to get together on that, right? Or is there a differing between the parties?
Well, the issue was that how do we pay for it? Right. And in this particular, it's through the gas tax.
Right.
And I voted no because it was a 40-some cent increase in one shot. And sometimes the wisdom of not maybe do a 2 or 3 cent increase every year might have been a better approach years ago. But when you hit somebody with a 43-cent increase, all of a sudden it becomes a problem. And it becomes not a good thing if you hit somebody with a 43-cent tax on gas tax all at once. And I think that we have to find a different way of looking at these taxes at a more baby step approach, if you will.
Right. Hurricane Dorian last week. That was making the news in a big way, right? You following it, like as a local business owner, as an Atlantic County resident, as an assembly person, any hurricane on the East Coast. Do you have any anyone watching and any concerns? You go through any routines when there's a threat?
I'm going back to when I was a mayor in 2012 when we had the derecho.
Yep.
Derecho it really devastated Northfield, my town. And so when you see these storms come up again, like Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy, whatever you want to call it, we were watching that as well because the derecho was before and then Superstorm Sandy, as you know, did. But when these storms come up, specifically, we didn't think Dorian was going to hit us head on, but you worry about the flooding and what's it going to do to our infrastructure. As an elected official and someone who just cares about the region, you want to make sure that you have your eye on it and making sure that that what's going to happen in this region. And I don't think there was that much flooding here. Was there a little bit?
A little minor flooding, but nothing significant. Right?
Well, you know what I noticed on Route 40 as you come into Atlantic City, the last few, because I'm in Atlantic City a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of police officers who close the right lane a lot of the time. There has been a lot of flooding in the last month or so.
Yep.
And it's certainly something that we should take a look at and how we're going to face flooding in the future, specifically in Route 40, and if we want to go down by Vagabond and things of that nature. There's some real problems.
And there's talks of raising Route 40 and raising Route 30 and making those evacuation routes, more resistant to flooding, where they're not always closing every single time.
But it makes you think, like, do we make sure that, first of all, that we get the bang for the buck, as far as, if you go by in front of that Vagabond, they're quite a big, they flood all the time.
Yeah, West End Ave and, Route 40, yes, yep.
Is this the solution? Is it 2.5, I think it's going to raise it 2.5 inches or 2.5 feet? Is it 2.5 feet?
Enough to hopefully, like you said, bang for the buck. You don't want to raise it just slightly where flooding happens 10 times instead of 20. You want to raise it so flooding happens, very seldom. So you want to make it as flood resistant as possible.
And so that's, hopefully it's $27.5 million they're going to spend there,
right,
on that project. In my office, we've been in contact with them, constantly making sure that that this gets done sooner or later, because it means a lot for our tourism, for the local businesses there, and the people who live back there as well.
I do want to bring up a recent issue with Dorian. I'm not going to make it a political issue, all right? With Dorian, there was the whole Alabama fiasco, if you will, all right? Where Dorian was not going to hit Alabama. Alabama, there was some social media stuff that happened. It's kind of some misinformation and a whole lot of controversy for the past week. But all that aside, not mentioning any names, not mentioning any sides, how important is it for meteorologists, for emergency managers, and for politicians too, who people look to? I mean, politicians have a following too, locally and state-wise and nationally, to be careful to get that right information out there. I mean, because during storms, the spread of information and the spread of disinformation or misinformation are both very rampant and can sometimes be conflicting and confusing.
Well, I'm just going to ask you a question too.
Yes.
I mean, as a meteorologist, right?
Right.
How many times are you wrong?
More often than we like. It's one of the few jobs you can be wrong and not.
But in your position, you should own it if you're wrong, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. In fact, I think people respect a meteorologist more if you say, you know what, Assemblyman, that derecho was not forecast that well. We thought it was going to be a thunderstorm or two. We thought, we didn't think there was going to be 100-mile-an-hour winds. That derecho surprised us. We got the forecast wrong. We learned from our mistake, and we'll be better next time. And I think humble pie is perhaps the biggest thing a meteorologist can slice up.
And I think that, if you kept saying that, about the duration, oh, well, I thought it was going to be a thunderstorm, and then you didn't own it, say, like, next time we should look at this a little bit better, like you said. I think that's very respectful in the way you should do it. Like, if there's a mistake made, own it and then move on. I think that's the best way to do it.
Did you have to do that professionally, whether it be as a businessman or as a politician? Like, is it the same thing? Because I know I have to own up to a lot of them whenever a forecast is wrong. Have you had personal experience with that?
Oh yeah, I've made mistakes as far as maybe saying the wrong thing on an issue or things of that nature, and it happens because you might get information that you don't know, and you say, listen. This is the way you have to change your position or change what you said, and you should own that. And I think that's the way that people respect you even more. The short term might be bad, but the long term, people look at those things and say, well, that's very important. I really respect if someone owns something.
Yeah.
And that's what you should do.
Right, because people do make mistakes.
Yeah.
Meteorologists, like I said, more often than most sometimes. But hey, this weekend was good. The Dorian forecast was good, so we got that right. Tropics are quiet right now, nothing to watch. What are you watching coming up in the next assembly session?
Well, I think that there's going to be there's continued issues, I guess, about as far as first of all, some of the good things that we've done here in our budget cycle. We've actually tackled property tax relief as far as fully funding for the senior freeze. We've homestead rebate, $175 million in property tax relief. So these are some of the things that I think that we did that are very, very important. I'm proud of the fact that our veterans will be able to do it from a $3,000 to a $6,000 tax deduction. And I think, if you want to look forward into the next session as far as the lame duck, I think that hopefully, I'm just hoping that everybody gets along, north, south, as you will, and that we...
And what's the, if I can use a forecasting term, what's the probability that happens? Like 40% chance of rain, what's the chance that everyone gets along north and south? Because it's an interesting divide in New Jersey. I didn't know when I first moved here 15 years ago how there's a lot of differences between north and south, and a lot of fighting between north and south. And what are the chances of everyone gets along?
Well, I just think that sometimes as we're leading up to an election, there's a little bit more friction involved because we all, as a Assemblyman, I want to get reelected. People in the district want to get reelected, and so there's always this friction between, I guess, everybody. But afterwards, there's a job to be done. After you're elected, sometimes a person once told me it might be easier to get elected, but then you got to do the job as the harder part. Right. And I think that's an important factor in being an elected official. Hey, listen, I guess anybody can get elected, but then you have to do the job. Yes. And I think that's a very important part of it. And I think, for the most part, I've listened to constituents. I'm the chairman now of state and local government, so I have a lot of, that's near and dear to my heart because I came from the local level. Yeah. And so there's issues that concerning specifically to our district that I can tackle and I can address that'll help people on the local level.
Yeah. I've also found, and I think we've talked about it before, maybe it was Assemblyman Armato, or it seems that when it comes to the shore, the importance of it for tourism, for revenue, for rebuilding it after storms, it's one area where Republicans, Democrats, North, South, Central, if you believe in Central Jersey, it does seem to be an issue where everyone works together. Do you think that is one of the few issues where you can say that? Is anything else come to mind?
The local, on the tourism part, as far as rebuilding the area if there's a storm that comes. Right. I think everybody knows that you have to do it if you want to continue for the jobs, for the tax revenue that comes from it. I think it's important that the overall safety and well-being of the region is that you have to rebuild your infrastructure, and when storm damages come through, we have to all work together in making sure that we get back to, hopefully it's a better place than it was before after a storm. Sometimes that sounds like, well, you want it the same, but you try to make it a better place.
I think we have. I mean, it's 7 years after Sandy. We had a very good summer weather-wise. We had a pretty quiet summer in terms of storms. I know some people are still out of their homes. I mean, you never fully recovered. But in 7 years, I think we've come a long way, and we've learned a lot. And the Jersey Shore is, almost fully back.
I think it is, but there's still problems out there, as you said, and the biggest problem, I guess, as far as, and we've addressed it, is there was a lot of bad contractors out there, and people actually just walked away from their homes because they paid somebody, they took the money, and they ran, they never got their house back.
And there is legislation now to prevent that happening, right?
We passed a transparency bill and actually like a footprint. So God forbid if another one of these storms come, we can guide through this a lot better than we did, because let's face it, it was a 1 in a 100-year storm, and a lot of things happened, and a lot of bad players out there, unfortunately, and now we have a blueprint to follow it, and I think that's one of the good things that came out of that.
And I think, it is a 100-year storm, you're absolutely right, but as an average, so you could have a storm 1 year, a storm 7 years later, and then no storms for 200 years, and you get the average of 1 in 100. So just because you get the 100-year storm doesn't mean you're clear for the next 100 years. And I think you're an interesting person because Northfield was ground zero for a derecho. I remember touring areas after the derecho, and I was constantly in Northfield. There was one street there.
Shepherd?
Yes,
that's right.
Shepherd Circle, right? Where
I
I could not believe the damage. And Our worst case scenario in Jersey, for those that lived through Sandy and those that lived through the derecho, are the winds of the derecho coupled with the water from Sandy at about 2 or 3 feet, and then a foot of rain. And that's our worst case scenario. Sandy was bad but had no wind. The derecho was bad but had very little rain and flooding. You got to really combine the two to come up with our worst case scenario, which is why we always got to be ready, as residents, and I think, politically we have to be ready with the right laws and the right, legislation in place to better, allow for recovery after the storm.
If the laws are there and all, you have to have cooperation between the state, county, and local levels, and that's what makes it all. The emergency management coordinators in each town, and the county, and the state, they all have to work together to making sure that the money gets to the right spot. Also, that they're all communicating together, because once you have that broken communication, things don't get done right.
And how was it? Like, let's take the derecho for instance, or Sandy. I mean, because you were local, we had on as a guest, and I'm very good friends with Vince Jones. I mean, we have a great county guy in Atlantic County, and a great county guy in Cape May County with Marty Kalugi. I think there is, and this is just, you can correct me if I'm wrong, very great communication on all levels, local, municipal, all the way to county. I'm a little less familiar with state, but it seems to be a very nice, wide open street.
Is very good communication, and the ratio, nobody saw that coming. But after the aftermath, the next day, we all got together, had meetings, and tried to help people as best we can. I guess one quick story was a woman who actually had a tree guy came by, and these tree guys, some of them were good, some were bad. He cut half the tree, and he said he'd come back the next day or so and get the rest of the tree out. And she called me, and she said he took my money. It was like 2 weeks later, and I actually rode my town, and I saw the truck, the name of the truck sitting in another town, and I actually called him, and I said, we have a woman on Mill Road who said that you cut half the tree, and now she's waiting for you to come back, and she paid you X amount of dollars. Why haven't you come back there? Well, he actually came back there the next day and finished the job. So that was a good story. But the bad story, there was a woman who had one tree, and a bad player came in and charged her $27,000 to take one tree out of her house. So these are the things that we have to forecast and try to make sure that the contractors are good. And I think that in this legislation that we put together to make sure that people put their names on the website, these contractors that fix these homes or tree services and things of that nature, and making sure they have the proper insurance and are legitimate and reputable companies to help these people through this trying time.
And I think we've seen it. I think disasters locally, and we've had unfortunately a few over the past, ever since Irene, ever since 2011, it's been pretty busy. It brings out the best in so many of us, but it does bring out the worst in a few too. And unfortunately, you've got to legislate to protect people against that, that small element. All right, we've been talking with Assemblyman Vince Mazzeo, Democrat from Atlantic County in District Number 2. This is a nonpartisan show. We are welcoming all local and county-wide politicians. We've got emergency managers, meteorologists, a wide variety of guests, because flooding, storms, all the stuff we talk about really is a nonpartisan issue that a lot of people agree on. But as you said, Assemblyman, it's just what's the best way to tackle it. And that's where we can always try to work together and be prepared for the next time a storm hits. We want to present you, as you've been a guest before, and I believe you've got in a Irish pub shirt. We are going to give you a well-wrapped Irish pub pint glass. You can put an alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage in there.
You can put anything you want in there.
Absolutely. Assemblyman, thank you so much. Any plans for the fall?
I'm just going to fight through this next campaign. I'm always running, and I'm always at different places all the time, and I think I've done a pretty good job as Assemblyman in District 2, and I look forward to...
you hoping for a fourth term?
A fourth term, and I hope November 5th everything comes out well, and I think that it's a constant fight in District 2, but again, I think I've proven myself as someone people can count on.
And how do people get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out to you? What's the best way? Email, phone number? You say. I mean,
Well, my office number is 609-383-1388. You can reach me at our office in Northfield, or right there on New Road. And call my business if you like. It's 609-641-6608. I'm there. I have two actually legislative offices. I have North and South and Northfield.
And what's the best pie being made for the fall right now at BF Mazzeo?
We're starting the pumpkin pie, the apple pie, and we've gotten good response as far as our apple pie. Apple pies, the apples are just starting up, so looking forward to a very successful fall.
Okay. All right. And are you an Eagles fan?
I am, yes.
Well, congratulations today.
Yeah.
You guys did well. My Patriots play tonight. I'll be listening to it on the on my drive tonight. So congratulations to Eagles fans. Assemblyman, thank you so much for being with us
pleasure,
tonight
Dan.
on this first day of football season. If the Eagles ever conflict with this time, sometimes we move them a little earlier in the day. So we will be back here, though, next Sunday night at 7 p.m. Palma Cardi, nursing a sore throat. Hopefully she'll be back with us as well. And have a great week. Enjoy the nice weather.